how are we gonna make things happen in these stories? I shot my husband in the butt because he was driving me crazy. I guess he's grown because he went skydiving. I was just angry because I fell and people laughed. From my head to my crotch. This is why I hate Christmas. Hello friends, for today's video in honor of the holiday season, I decided to take a break from my usual reading and pick up some holiday themed books, specifically some holiday romances. I did this last year, kind of on a whim, and I did find a book that I enjoyed, but also I discovered one of my least favorite books I have picked up in my entire life, primarily because the main characters were so dumb. And that book was One Day in December. One Day in December wasn't so much a holiday book as it was just a book that takes place in December. And it followed, and I realized that I did not read this year, but I have to mention it because something about it relates to what I'm going to discuss for this year's holiday themed book reading. That book though, One Day in December. Sorry, I'm remembering the premise, and it's funny every time. So it follows this woman who one day is just on the bus, and she looks out the bus window and sees some guy, and she's like, oh my god, that's the love of my life. This is love at first sight. Then I thought, oh, she's just being silly, hysterical. It's purposefully over the top for hyperbolic reasons. No. She genuinely feels like she's meant to be with this man that she saw for half a second through a bus window. And she has meltdowns over the fact that she hasn't run into him again in a really busy city. It's not like she lives in the middle of nowhere, some small town where there's only 50 people or something. She's all distraught. And then, dun dun dun, her friend one day comes in with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend is that guy. Oh. And I was just like, you gotta be kidding me with this idiot main character. And then the book proceeds to go through the next, I think, 10 years of these people's lives. And shockingly, the woman kind of turns into a decently normal functioning person, and the guy just spirals into becoming so unbelievably unlikable. I did not think when I started that book that anybody within that book could be dumber than the main character. And then he was like, hold my eggnog. And then he took the seat. So I was like, all right, I can't stand these people. And my only hope for this year was that I didn't dislike anything as much as that book. That was all I wanted, because I did find a book last year I enjoyed. And then the rest I don't even really remember. I know there was some that were just fine. But this year I read 5. And like I said, that was my hope. I just want to not have anything that I dislike more than those characters. And that did not happen. I ended up finding a book that I was like, what? I hate these people. And weirdly, within that One Day in December book, there are some things that occur within the book that are not really okay things to do, but I didn't feel like the characters thought they were okay. I think they were fully aware of when they crossed certain lines or did things that are hurtful. They understood that. And in this book, I just kind of, we'll get to it. But there are some things that I was like, yeah, I hate these people. I can't stand them. So anyway, let's go through what the 5 books that I read were and how we're going to go about this lovely holiday themed video. I read 5 books as noted. The books are The Plight Before Christmas, Lovelight Farms, The Holiday Trap, which I always want to say The Holiday Swap because I believe last year I think that was the title, The Holiday Swap, where these twins swap places. This book, The Holiday Trap, are 2 people swap houses. But if at some point I accidentally say The Holiday Swap, apologies, I'm referring to The Holiday Trap, so forgive me. How My Neighbor Stole Christmas, The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year. And typically when I do this style of video, I like to go through and I'll say what my favorites are at the end, my ranking of these. And then I try to guess what other people's, how they would rank based off of average ratings. And then I actually check and assess and see. I have no idea. I'll attempt. I'll try to guess what I think the average ratings, how it would place them. But I have no idea. I kind of was eyeballing it earlier, looking at the list, kind of thinking about like, maybe this one will be here, maybe this one will be here. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why. What reason would people have to like this? And then I would think about it. I'm like, I don't know. This one was not annoying, I suppose. My favorite of these was just the one that bothered me the least, which is not really what I wanted. But I suppose maybe this will be fun for all of you. So as I go through each of these, to cheer myself up throughout editing, I'm going to have Luna Bear interludes. Luna Bear being my adorable dog. So there will be cute little interludes with her as we segue between each of these books. And I'm going to save the one I despised for last, because it's probably going to take the most amount of time. A quick heads up, though, before we do jump into it, that because these are romance books, and some of them were a little more explicit, just a heads up, because I know sometimes some of you have mentioned before that you'll have my videos playing in your car or in your house and there's kids around or something. So just a heads up that maybe some of the content that gets mentioned today, you just might want to have that awareness that it's going to be a little bit more adult. I am going to go through spoilers. This is going to be very, very casual. I'm just going to kind of tell you about the books, if there were notable scenes, if there were things that I appreciated about them, and I'll let you know what I thought maybe the pros and cons of these, kind of how I usually go about them, except for it's going to be a little more conversational. I'll chat through events of the books, and it's just going to be hanging out, talking about these books. All right, let's jump into it.
Hi, Luna. Hi, dear. Hi. 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 Oh. Hi, bear. Hello. Hi. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah. All right, I'm getting our snackies.
We'll go ahead and start with How My Neighbor Stole Christmas. This particular story is meant to be a play on the Grinch story, where you have a character who hates Christmas, and then you discover more about why they hate Christmas as you progress. Except for the way it's structured, you know immediately why this guy hates Christmas, and you actually kind of understand. And his name is Cole, and he's seen as this grumpy guy. And then the lady of the story, her name is Story, spelled, I think, Storee, because I listened to the audiobook for this one, and I looked it up, and I believe that's how it's spelled, but her name is Story. And she is very unlikable, and I thought when I first started it, because the book definitely does not take itself too seriously, and there were a decent amount of moments throughout this book that I actually was kind of having fun, but Story sucks. She is a terrible person, and I thought, because the book doesn't take itself too seriously, that initially when we're first introduced to her and she is so unlikable, I thought, oh, okay, we're going to see this transformation where Story goes from being this extremely self-absorbed person to growing and maybe also falling in love, of course, all that stuff. But when I got done with the book, I was like, wait, Story kind of didn't grow at all. And my initial thought of her as soon as she was introduced, my first scene with her, I thought, I don't think this girl deserves love. I don't know that I believe that necessarily of real human beings, but in this fictional story, I was like, this is a terrible person. The setup is that when she was a kid, Story and her sister would come visit their great aunt, I believe, is their relation, but they treat her in a lot of ways like a grandmother because they're really, really close to her. And she's a very old woman. I think she's close to 90 years old or around 90 years old. And she has had an injury, a hip injury specifically. Her parents, meaning Story's parents, who are probably the ones that you would expect would be taking care of this elderly woman now that she's older, they're too busy vacationing because they have some timeshare or something rich. So they're like, no, we want to go enjoy Christmas in a tropical location. And they're not even in the book, so whatever. They also kind of suck. But they're not there. And they're like, Story, So here's the thing. Your job, you can do it from basically anywhere, right? So it makes the most sense if you go help your great aunt. And Story's like, ugh, gross. She does not want to help this old woman who is nice and provided a lot of lovely memories throughout her childhood, because they would go visit around Christmas time when they were kids, her and her sister. They would visit this family member, and this family member always made Christmas so wonderful for them. She's really nice. She's not cranky and crabby and mean or anything like that. She's a really nice, funny, silly old lady. And she's like, ugh, I don't want to have to, like, am I going to have to help her clean her crevices? Ugh. And I was like, I don't want this woman to fall in love. I don't want anyone to fall in love with her. She's terrible. And again, I was like, but that's the point, right? She's going to be terrible. And then as the book progresses, we're going to break down the fact that she's so selfish and so awful. And she's going to be like, wow, I'm a terrible person. Maybe I should try being a better person. That kind of happened in this, but not really. But anywho, so this particular town that the grandma lives in is a year-round Christmas town. So all year long, they have Christmas things going on, but literally around Christmas, they have this silly little competition in town to see who's the most festive person. And they have all these ridiculous trials that you compete in. And some of them have to do with having a light show. Some of them have to do with creating the best holiday drink or baking, that kind of thing, making candy canes. And whoever ends up winning all of these things, has the best score of all of these, is the winner. So Story, she comes back to help take care of this old woman. Her sister actually also comes to help take care of the old woman. So the sister's actually going to be the one handling a lot of the caretaking roles. But Story is primarily there just for the times that the sister can't be there and has something else going on. And Story just is whining and complaining about this whole predicament the whole time. She's just bitter and upset. And I just couldn't stay. She made a fuss about literally everything. She doesn't even kind of try to make it seem like, for the old woman's sake, that, oh no, we don't mind being here. It's totally fine. She doesn't do any of that. And I'm fully aware, as somebody that was a caretaker for someone, I am perhaps a little extra salty at the behavior of this character. I can admit that. But also, I recognize it's a challenging thing to take care of a person, but the old woman is actually doing okay. She moves around pretty well. She just needs some help here and there. And the sister is going to be doing the primary things when it comes to the caretaking role. So Story just has to kind of be there sometimes, and she's a brat about it. But the old woman is like, hey, Story, here's the thing. I really wanted to win this year in this Christmas competition. However, because of my injury, I can't enter this year. And I don't want to win from pity votes, so I entered you in on my behalf. And Story's like, what? How could you? No. And she's all upset about this. And I'll be honest, I wouldn't like it if somebody entered me into something that I didn't want to be a part of. I'd be like, I'm probably not going to do that now. But she ends up doing it, and she really doesn't want to. And one of the reasons she really doesn't want to is because when she was a teenager, around 18-ish years old, she just really embarrassed herself in front of the whole town because she kind of fell a little bit, and then she bumped into this other woman who then fell into this river, and it was cold, and the woman was fine, but she could never get over this. And there is this sort of implied idea that this derailed Story's life, this embarrassing moment, because her career now is that she edits a lot of movies, like films and whatnot. Duh, that's what movies are. I didn't need to explain movies to you. But anyway, so she has some editing work that she does. And it's sort of implied that she, back in the day, actually kind of thought about being in front of the camera. But ever since this terribly embarrassing moment, she has just retreated into herself. And also, this might contribute to why she has no friends, because she just stays in her house, and because she doesn't really have to leave her house because she can do her editing from her home, she just never really goes outside or talks to people pretty much ever. And I'm like, am I supposed to care about this? Is a very easily fixed problem. This really isn't a problem. And maybe you don't have friends because you're so unlikable. I mean, I get the book. Oh, I thought my phone was turned off. Hold on. my husband, he's thanking me for bringing potatoes because his work had a holiday thing today. Very on theme with the video. She has this unlikable personality. She's a horrible, selfish person. And the book gives no evidence that that's the reason she doesn't have friends, but that's my assessment. You know, I'm reading subtext. She's terrible. That's the real reason. Anyway, when compared to why Cole, the love interest in the story, is a grump, I'm like, Cole has every reason to be a grump. So Cole, when he was the same age, that same time when Story embarrassed herself, he had lost his parents. They died in a car accident, and he was pretty much alone at a really formative time in his life. And he tried going to school and everything, but he just felt so lost. And it's really sad to lose both his parents all of a sudden. And one of his really good friends, they kind of took him in. He tried going to school, but he was like, I don't know. I feel adrift, and I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And they're like, just come home. We will take care of you. You're our family. And don't worry about it. We can easily find work for you to do. So he works with reindeer, which is actually really cute. But he pretty much just works with these reindeer and then doesn't really go out into town very much. He has a lot of trauma around all of that, which is very understandable. But he lived in this town. And Story, growing up, would visit this town around the holidays. And he was the cute boy that she would always see in the winter time. And he kind of had a crush on her. She obviously kind of had a crush on him, too. But when they come back into town, he seems to dislike her for some reason, and you don't exactly know why. And the big reveal is that when he was struggling with having just found out his parents died, Story didn't realize that his parents had just died, and she was so upset about this terribly embarrassing moment that she just goes off about how much she hates this town, and she can't wait to leave, and she just can't stand anybody, and she's just kind of venting. But he had just had his parents die, and she's just hating on everything he has left. So he kind of just is like, okay, well, I don't really need to talk to her again in my life. And again, they were really young, and you kind of understand why that would be such a distasteful memory for him. So when she comes back, he's like, ugh, gross, Stories here, blah. And then his best friend / basically brother at this point, he is like, didn't you have a crush on her? And he's like, I hate her. You know, there's that whole vibe. And when he finds out that Story is entering into this ridiculous competition, he's like, there's no way. I can't let her win. She hates this town. So he enters the competition too, to the whole town's shock, because this man hates to ever be out in public, and he's so antisocial. But he is the kind of Grinch character. So throughout the story, because they have to go up against each other, and they have a lot of ridiculous trash talk, they end up spending time together, realizing they have feelings for each other. She finally realizes his parents are dead, and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I wouldn't have said what I said. I was just angry because I fell and people laughed, basically. So he and her, they rekindle what they had, but then it becomes really steamy, and they are, hooking up all the time. And he was like, I don't know what I'm going to do because I want to ask her to stay, but also I don't know if she wants to stay. And she's like, maybe I actually like this town, and maybe I like being around people. I mean, I don't have any friends after all. And, what do you know? Friendship and family is kind of nice. And also, I really like doing it with Cole. So, also, the fact that his name is Cole in a Christmas, I was about to say Christmas movie, a Christmas book. Anywho, so it's very ridiculous. The old lady is funny. I did like her quite a bit. But toward the end of the book, there's this reveal that it turns out that the old woman faked her injury. And she did this to try and get Story and Story's sister to come together, because they were all kind of worried about Story and the fact that she's so adrift and so alone. And the old lady kind of gets on the sister for not being there enough for Story and not being a part of her life very much. And then the sister's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize we had drifted so far apart. And Story's like, I guess I didn't even notice, but yeah, we have. And I would have liked having a relationship with you. I mean, you're my sister. And a little bit, I'm like, why is this all on her sister? Story sucks. Why is this all on her sister? Also, she's a grown woman who can just go outside, just go talk to people. What do you like to do? What are your hobbies? Find something in town, because she lives in California. She doesn't live in the middle of nowhere, typically where she lives, I mean. So you can easily just be like, where's an open gym where I could go play this sport I like? Or what crafts or hobbies do I enjoy? Maybe there's a local meetup. You can go do any, you can just try talking to your coworkers. I get that you don't work with them in person, but do you never contact anyone else? You truly have, I don't know. I'm just like, this is, in comparison to resolving trauma around the death of your parents, I just kind of am like, are we supposed to act like these are the same? And also, why is it the sister's fault? I mean, I get why you might kind of be like, hey, I want you to be there for your sister a little bit more. But you're going to fake an entire injury and make these two women come move in with you and become your basically full-time caretakers just so that they can talk to each other a little bit more. I understand, I'm fully aware. It's a book filled with shenanigans, so I shouldn't be surprised that this was all a ruse or anything like that. And I mean, I had my suspicions that maybe they were up to something, but I didn't realize the up to something was going to be like, Story, I think you're a little stuck in life, so we took it upon ourselves to force you to talk to your sister, but also your sister, it's kind of partially her fault too. I just thought that was very silly. And then Cole and her, though, they end up together and everything goes great. But the third act breakup moment is very, very forced. It's super forced because I know that sometimes third act breakups are silly. And sometimes you're like, okay, they're having a single little argument or something and then this will get resolved really easily. And it almost feels like you wish something bigger would happen because then it feels like, what's the point of even having this if it's going to be so silly? In this book's case, though, it was extra ridiculous. The sister, there's this whole thing where Cole pretends that he actually really is interested in Story because he's trying to pull at the town's heartstrings. Like, oh, he's just this lovesick man and she brings him so much joy, but she won't go on a date with him. And he's trying to do it to get sympathy points so that he can get ahead in this competition to be the most festive member of this Christmas town. And she kind of calls his bluff and she's like, actually, yeah, I'd love to go on a date with you. So then they're fake dating, but then they start actually dating, but then they're pretending that they're not actually dating to the sister because if the sister finds out, there's like, what's going to happen if the sister finds out? So if the sister finds out, she might think she just might basically be like, I don't know if this is a good idea, Story. That's all really that would come. This Story could have just told her sister, actually, we are dating. Story's sister, though, ends up finding out that they hooked up. And she's like, Story, you're so dumb. He's clearly just hooking up with you to distract you from this competition. It's clear as day. So she goes out of her way to ruin his Christmas lights so that he'll lose points in the competition. And then this coincides at this exact moment when Cole's best friend / brother decides, because he's just like, what if she's just like trying to get in your head, man? What if she's trying to thwart your doing well in the competition? What if she's just like getting in your head / pants so she can get ahead? And he's like, she wouldn't do that to me. But when he sees that the lights are all messed up and he sees the tracks going back to the old lady's house where Story and her sister and the old lady are, his friend's like, I'm so sorry, man. Like, I guess she was just messing with you. And he's like, I can't believe she would do this. And he comes out of the truck and he's all mad. And Story's like, I didn't do this. Like, I swear I didn't do this. This wasn't me. And he's like, I don't want to hear it. He just, like, gets in the truck and leaves. And I'm like, this is so easily resolved. You just talk for half a second. She will explain very clearly, I didn't do this. / her sister will be like, actually, it was me. But anyway, so he's upset that night, and he's feeling sorry for himself. He's like, this is why I hate Christmas. And then the sister is like, Story, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you actually had feelings for him. / I didn't realize that he was finally starting to heal from his trauma from losing his parents like 10 years ago. So then they go out of their way to get the lights all fixed again, to show how much she loves him. And then he comes back in the morning and sees it. And she's like, it wasn't me, it was my sister, actually. And then they live happily ever after. Anyway, but while the shenanigans at times were entertaining, and I did appreciate the book didn't take itself too seriously and just kind of had fun with how ridiculous it was, at the same time, I thought, but Story's so unlikable. She never actually was less annoying. She was actually always kind of annoying. So, it was fine. It was fine. It wasn't the one I despised. We'll get to that one later. But that was how my neighbor stole Christmas. Yay! Good job. Love you. Love you. Thank you. Oh. Luna. Good job. Good job. I'm actually going to group the next two books together, not because they're similar to one another, but because I felt similarly about them. One of them I liked a little bit more than the other one. So the one that I liked a little bit more would be Lovelight Farms. And then the one that I liked a little bit less, but ultimately I didn't really feel a whole lot of much of anything, would be The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year. With Lovelight Farms, you follow the characters Stella and Luca. Stella runs this cute little Christmas tree farm, and she is starting to have some financial struggles. She had applied to have the Christmas tree farm featured on this one influencer's page. This particular influencer is somebody who goes around to a lot of small businesses, small towns, finds these really lovely people, couples, families, those sorts of things, who are running these lovely businesses that bring something valuable to the community. And then she amplifies them so that hopefully more people discover them, they get more business. It sounds nice. It's not annoying or anything like that. And she has this application form where people can fill out why they think she should feature whatever their business is. And Stella thinks, well, I have nothing to lose. I might as well just throw in that I have this Christmas tree farm, and maybe if we can get not only her influence, but also this prize, if you're the winner of this is the best place you should go, that would go a long way in helping me with my business. And she lies on the form by saying that she runs this Christmas tree farm with her partner. And she does this, she just really wasn't thinking, but she just kind of wrote that because from what she's noticed most of the time when people have been featured, the people that are featured are usually couples, or there's some kind of really cute romance involved where this business that people have together, it's what brought them together. It's how they met the love of their life, that sort of thing. So she thinks, like, let me just put that I have a significant other that I run this with. Maybe that'll increase the chances of this influencer wanting to come out to the Christmas tree farm. She ends up finding out that she is indeed one of the candidates for being featured, and she realizes, oh my gosh, but I lied on this form, and I even signed that there was nothing untrue on my application, so now I have to fake that I run this with another person. So she ends up asking her longtime best friend / the man that she has this really strong crush on, Luca. She asks Luca if he will pretend to be her boyfriend for whenever this influencer does stop into this tiny town. There's a lot that she didn't think about. First off, everyone in this tiny town, this guy doesn't live here, but he visits often, and they somewhat know him because of when he does come around, usually he's coming out to visit family, and so there's kind of an awareness of these two as friends, and everybody in this tiny town wants these two to be together. They're fully aware they have not been together for a really long time, nor have they been running this Christmas tree farm together. So they're like, oh my gosh, we have to pretend like we have to think about all these other things. So it's a fake dating trope, as you can probably tell, but with some extra lies mixed in as well. The thing that kind of took away from this story a little bit is the fake dating kind of naturally facilitates this idea of proximity, closeness. We have to act like we really like each other, and oftentimes characters realize that they do like each other, all these things. But these two individuals, first off, you know already that Stella is head over heels in love with Luca. She's just never really made a move because, actually for very understandable reasons, she lost her mom, and her mom was the biggest support system in her life. And ever since losing her mom, she doesn't really have anybody else in her life she's really close to. She met Luca pretty much right after her mom died, and he has always been her best friend. And she doesn't want to risk losing what they have and also potentially losing him in the process. So you kind of understand why she is struggling to make that next step and why she's actually hesitant to even ask him, even though he clearly is happy to do it, to pretend to be her boyfriend for this whole situation. She's hesitant to ask him because she's like, what's this going to do to our friendship? Is this going to make things weird? And she does have her dad, but she was an oopsie baby. So it turned out the dad had actually been married and he got this other woman pregnant. So they were kind of the shameful side of his life, that he just pretends for the most part that they don't really exist. So she doesn't really have a strong relationship with her father. She does show up every year at his Thanksgiving. I say his because he doesn't really have Thanksgiving on the actual day with her. He ends up having Thanksgiving, I think it's the first weekend of November every year with her, and then her half-brother and the woman that he was actually married to. He has it then so that when he has what is basically real Thanksgiving, he doesn't have to bring around this shameful daughter that he then has to explain to everybody. So he's awful, is basically the gist of that. So she just doesn't have a lot of close people in her life. And unlike Story, she, it seems like, isn't super close to a lot of people for very understandable reasons. But Luca is somebody she's very close to. And, okay, you know that she really likes Luca, but you understand why she doesn't want to risk what they have. Luca also clearly, though, is so in love with her. so obviously in love with her. And that's what I mean by it kind of took some of the oomph out of the equation here, because, and when you learn about their friendship over the course of the many years they've known each other, they have, I'm not trying to dictate what, crosses the line into basically maybe you guys are a little bit more than friends versus if you're just friends. Friendships look different from one person to the next. But they've been very touchy-feely with each other for a long time. They do basically everything they can together. They've slept in the same bed together. They've cuddled together. And I'm just kind of like, that's not super common with friends. I know some people have those kinds of friendships. But I think what usually is different is some people that have those kinds of friendships aren't harboring this all-consuming love for this person. There are some people that have those kinds of dynamics, but the reason that it works is because they're not in love with each other. When it finally is revealed, because they start fake dating, and then they're immediately like, well, we have to act like we've kissed before, smooch a lot and make out a lot, and then they're like, well, we gotta try to make things as believable as possible. So they're just like basically together. And then this tiny third act breakup conflict for them is that when it's coming up on the end of when they have to keep pretending to fake date, at this point, they've crossed all the lines. They are basically actually a couple at this point. She's gone home to his family's house for the holidays, and they've been intimate with each other in basically all the ways, and he is wanting to switch up his job, so he's going to be way closer to where she is, and they keep talking about seeing each other. It's going to be so much easier to see each other, and basically like see each other as a couple. But then when that deadline is coming up of when they had to finish fake dating by, she's like, well, we're going to be done fake dating by then. He's like, yeah, but like we're going to just like keep dating, right? And then she's like, that wasn't what we said. And he's like, are you serious though? Like I wouldn't have done all these things if like you actually don't want to pursue this. And she's like, I don't know. And then they have a little tiny, hiccup in their relationship. And then eventually she's like, actually, I do though. I was just scared. And then they end up together, which again, it's fine. It was fine. It was cute enough, but it was like, well, these two are clearly in love. It doesn't really feel like fake dating when they're already totally in love with each other. And as soon as they're fake dating, they're basically like, we might as well basically actually date though. So it was fine. It was cute. I did appreciate the way that it showed the trauma with her life. And also there are some things about his life too, because he hasn't had his father in his life for a long time, and that's kind of impacted his life, of course. So there were aspects to this that I liked well enough. Also, some of the other things that came up in the book is like interruptions to that were antagonistic in nature were kind of silly. For example, there is somebody in this tiny, tiny town who had originally been hoping to buy this land that this Christmas tree farm is on. And when Stella came in and bought it, she had no idea that this other guy was hoping to buy it, but apparently he's harbored this grudge for a really long time. And he keeps trying to break things on her farm, or he keeps messing with the plants and doing things to them that kills these trees and things like that, which is costing her a lot of money. So that happens. And then also when the woman who is an influencer comes and she loves the Christmas tree farm and she really, really likes Stella, but then when she discovers that Stella and Luca aren't actually together, she's like, well, you did lie on your application, so... And I'm just like, that's kind of a goofy reason, though. Like, that it doesn't actually have anything to do with this Christmas tree farm and this business. I feel like it's a little goofy, but everything ends up working out in the end. It's totally fine. But some of the little hiccups that occur along the way were a little forced. They were a little forced. But overall, I mean, there was nothing really within this book that deeply annoyed me or that I was angry about. It was just fine. It was relatively cute. I would read something else by this author. The other book, though, that I didn't have a ton of feelings for, this one did irk me the tiniest bit on occasion, but ultimately it wasn't necessarily a super upsetting book or anything like that. And the book would be The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year. So this story follows two writers, and they specifically are kind of mystery thriller style writers. This woman who is known for being this famous mystery writer ends up having these two come to her home that's in the middle of nowhere. And she lives in this basically old mansion type of place. And there's a bunch of other really exceptionally wealthy people, some of whom even have some relation to royalty in this home. They're snobby rich people. And Maggie, she is someone who something has occurred in her past. She's been married before, but she's divorced. And so you're kind of learning what happened with that throughout the story. But she can't stand the guy who's also a writer for a couple of reasons. One, because she had this great career shifting opportunity that he ended up beating her out for. And this particular guy, she tells straight to his face basically that she thinks he writes bad books. She's like, you write leather jacket novels. And he's like, what does that even mean? She's like, like your main characters would like ride a motorcycle and wear a leather jacket. So she's just kind of belittling his work, which is, not the nicest. And he's, for the most part, nothing but relatively nice to her. He keeps asking her over the course of the book, before they've even moved into we like each other territory, he's always like, do you want to make out? Out of nowhere. I was like, wait, what? He asks that all the time. Imagine if any time you had an awkward pause or silence with someone you knew, you're like, do you just want to make out? That's what he does all the time. Anyway, the first time it happened, I was like, okay. And then the second time I was like, he already asked this. This is kind of weird. And then it did become a running joke. He's always asking, and then at some point they actually do want to make out, that kind of thing. But anyway, she can't stand this guy, or so she thinks. She can't stand this guy because one time she overheard in them talking about her divorce, she overheard him say something like, of course he left her. Something like that. She didn't stick around long enough to hear or understand that what he meant was like, that guy sucks. He's really insecure. Of course he would leave her because he can't handle that his wife is so successful because he's so insecure. So she thinks like, okay, well, I hate him. And she also, though, is like, but also he's hot, and I hate that he's hot, which is another reason I hate him. And then also, he beat me out for this, like, great opportunity. They're stuck together in this mansion, and this woman who owns this mansion, who is this really well-loved author, it would seem someone's trying to kill her, and she's gone missing. And everyone else at this house that was invited over, everyone else is kind of like, she'll show up. Nobody really seems to care that much, and the two of them are trying to figure out what's going on. There's a reason they can't just call for the police or detectives or anybody. They can't really call because of reasons. They're in the middle of nowhere. there's a lot of snow and, all that stuff. So they're like, in the meantime, though, we got to figure out what happened. And she thinks, oh, she's setting up. She thinks the old woman has set up this whole mystery for her to solve, or for someone to solve, to determine who's going to kind of be following in her footsteps. But she's like, it's got to be me. I have to solve this. And then the guy is like, I want to solve it. And she's like, of course, you would try to steal my thunder. But then people start shooting at them, and they're in danger. And she's like, oh, shoot, maybe this is actually, maybe someone did try to kill her. So then they're trying to solve a crime, and they also are realizing they have feelings for each other. It was odd because it felt like sometimes we could have had a little bit more going on. It felt like we were getting sort of the idea of the story, but I had hoped we would have fleshed out pretty much every part of this story. I wish we had fleshed out a little bit more of the... I mean, honestly, I don't really feel like the two main characters had a whole lot of chemistry. I wish we had fleshed out how they interact with each other, their dynamics. I wish we had a little bit more of that. I wish the mystery component, that the other characters had played a little bit more of a role, because it's almost one of those, like, mystery, it's one of these people, locked room. It's almost that feeling, except for you hardly know any of these people. So I felt like we could have expanded on all the side characters so that you were a little bit more invested in, like, who did this? It's like a giant game of Clue kind of a feel. So I wish that we'd done that a little bit more. You do get a little bit more of what happened with her ex-husband, and I wish we could have gotten more of that as well. It just felt like I wish we could have gotten more of everything, I suppose. So it was okay. This one didn't really work for me. I wasn't super upset about it, but I didn't really like it either. Luna, are you gonna put your foot in your mouth? Oh, is it gonna work? Is it gonna work? Ah! Oh, almost. Oh. The Holiday Trap is the next story, and the thing I liked about this story is that it was very different in its use of dual perspectives for a romance story than what we typically get. Usually, if you have dual perspective, the two main characters are the love interests. And in this story, the two main characters are not the love interests, so that was kind of fun. You have almost two different love stories happening. The setup is that you have one character whose family is clearly very enmeshed. They're way too in each other's business, they're way too reliant upon each other, and they're very codependent. And our main character is getting to a point where she's feeling very smothered by all of this. She feels like she can't really live her life. And also her parents, her sisters, they have a tendency to bulldoze through how she feels about things because they decide it's what's best for the family. And she reaches a snapping point. She just wants to get away, especially because the holidays are coming up, and she's like, I just need to get away from them. And then the other character, so that character's name is Greta. The other character is Truman. And Truman finds out that his boyfriend has a whole family, and he's just kind of like this secret side piece. And he's been seeing this guy for a year, so he thought they were going to finally start getting to be really serious. So Truman's also like, I wish I could just get away. I don't even want to be here. And because they both have careers where they're able to do a lot of work from home, a mutual friend of both of these two is like, hey, I have an idea. Why don't you two just swap houses? Because they live pretty far apart. One of them lives in this really tiny coastal town, and then the other one lives in New Orleans. So we're like, why don't you guys just switch places? Like, just stay in each other's houses. That way you don't have to worry about money. I know the both of you. You guys can exchange numbers, and it's better than like going to a stranger's house or having to pay to stay somewhere. And they're both like, you know what? This actually sounds like a good idea. And thus, as you would expect, these are the two perspectives, and they each have their own love stories going on. Also, both of them are queer, which is also something that you don't see in a lot of contemporary romance stories. So it was a different way of going about it. I thought that the setup was actually kind of fun and cute, and a thing that's kind of a consistent through line with a lot of these is that a lot of times the setups are kind of ridiculous. This one didn't feel all that ridiculous, you know? I feel like this one, there was some practicality to it. However, practicality kind of went out the window with specifically Truman. Truman is one of those characters, you know, in stories when a character is made to feel bad about themselves for something that they shouldn't feel bad about. And they end up, as a result, having this idea in their head that they are whatever they've been told, or they see a very normal part of themselves as something to be ashamed of or to feel bad about. So Truman, he's been kind of made out to feel like he is pathetic and a terrible judge of character. And I wouldn't call him pathetic, but he is one of those people that I feel like in an effort to write him as like kind of shy and quirky, that he ends up getting written in a way that you're like, anybody else who would act like this would be really odd and kind of cringy, and also at times completely inappropriate, bordering on harassment. So I'm just going to kind of fast forward through what happens with Truman's perspective, and then we'll return to Greta. So Truman ends up having feelings for this man that runs this flower shop in this tiny coastal town, and I feel really bad for this character because he's very, very nice, and he's such an integral part of the community, but his mother is somebody who is struggling with, it's either early onset Alzheimer's or dementia, so she is struggling with her memory, as you would expect, but she's also starting to become kind of a danger to herself. So he runs this shop. He doesn't make a lot of money, so he can't afford to have help. So he's both running the shop, and then every night he's taking care of his mom. And she's not that old either, so it's also really weighing on him to see her be so capable in some ways, and then in other ways need so much help. And Truman is somebody who is very good at organizing. He's very good at coming up with good business ideas, so he is instantly wanting to help his love interest in the story. And their dynamics in a lot of ways are kind of cute, like the way they grow to get to know each other and those sorts of things are nice. But there are two things. One is relatively minor, and then the other thing is not relatively minor. It was like, what are you doing? So Truman, in a lot of his life, he felt very seen by this particular fantasy book series, which, hey, a lot of people can relate to. A lot of people have that work of fiction that they really connected with and helped them through tough times. So he has a certain work of fiction that he grew up loving. And he knows that the author, who's a famous recluse, used to write from somewhere in this state. And the town that he's staying in, and very specifically the house he's staying in, there are aspects to it that he starts to wonder, wait a second, is this the house that the author wrote from? And so he, at the end of the story, when him and the love interest are together, he's like, this is something I have to do. I have to do this. I have to do this. And the thing he has to do is track down where this author lives, who clearly doesn't want any interactions with other people. But he has to, because he discovers, yes, she definitely not only used to write in this town, but she was friends with the love interest's mom. So he's like, I have to track her down. I need to go to her house, and I need to tell her how much her books meant to me. And this is like the epilogue, sort of fun little happily ever after closure moment that happens at the end of Truman's plotline, is like him and the love interest are together, and he's like, this is something I have to do. And if I was the love interest, I'm like, I would tell him, like, I don't think you have to do this. I think that this is actually very inappropriate. You shouldn't do this. You know how you've sometimes wondered if you're a bad judge of character? This is one of those moments. This is not a thing you do. You do not, you don't stalk people. You don't hunt people down and go to their house, which is what he does. Finds this woman's house, knocks on the door. He's like, oh, I'm so nervous. I'm like, you should leave. Those nerves are your brain telling you that this is extremely, extremely unacceptable. He goes to her house, though. He knocks on the door, and she opens the door, but she like instantly goes to close the door, which, yeah, call someone. Like this man should not be here. This is not okay. Anyway, so he's like, wait, please hold on. And then he just has this long monologue about like, okay, so let me explain. I'm so sorry. It's just that your books really mean a lot to me. And recently I ended up switching houses with my friend Greta because I found out that the man I was dating had a whole secret family. And he goes on this like page long thing. And then he's like, like all out of breath. And she's like, good Lord, do you need to come in? And I'm just like, come on, just close the door in his face. I was so upset at this scene. I thought it was completely ridiculous that this happened. Please, 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 nobody ever, I mean, I would think I wouldn't need to say that, but also don't do that, just in case. Don't do that. This is like a thing that if anything, maybe this could have launched him into realizing, like, what have I done with my life? I am totally off the rails here, and I need to, I no longer know. I had a meltdown. I went to this woman's house. This was not okay. Like, it would make sense if that was the beginning of the book. Not the end! Not the end! What are you doing? So that really, I did not like that. And that's what I mean by, some of his decision making is not always the best, and that's something he feels kind of insecure about. And I'm just like, yeah, but this was one of those things where people should have told you, you don't do that. Actually, don't do that. Don't do that. And as somebody who, I don't even like when I hear, what's that joke about people around my age and maybe some of your ages, that even just hearing the doorbell ring, you're like, what? Who's here? I don't have a doorbell. But if somebody's knocking, I'm just like, what the heck? Why is somebody knocking? So, I already am a little nervous about, like, why is somebody knocking on my house? Who is this person? I can't imagine if someone tracked me down. I just think that was ridiculous. Anyway, so Truman, I was like, oh man, buddy, come on. But the other very, 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 very minor thing is that the biggest hiccup between Truman and his love interest in the story is, how are we going to, first off, we only just met. I've only been with you for about a month, and you have some very serious things going on in your life. You are a caretaker for your mother who has things that are very, very challenging to try and assist with. So it's not a simple fix for the most part. Something like, even though I had some criticisms of how the book played out and the writing in this book, Abby Jimenez also had Say You'll Remember Me, which covered something like this. It was challenging. It's like long distance. The character is taking care of, she is one of the people helping take care of her mother, who is going through something similar to what this character's mother is going through in this book. And in that story, I do feel like Abby Jimenez really tackled how difficult it is to be able to fit love in within all of this other stuff. Romantic love, being able to try and develop a relationship with someone when you're long distance and when you're caring for a family member. It is really, really tough. So in this story, we're getting near the end, and I'm just like, I'm kind of curious. So I was like, well, maybe they'll, he'll move to this small coastal town. He does really love it. He can do a lot of his work from home. He's an accountant. Maybe he'll move here, and then maybe he can help with the mom, because he is so good about developing efficient systems that he actually gets through his work really fast a lot of times. So I thought, oh, maybe he can do that. He can also help the love interests with their shop, so he can help that business grow and maybe get to a point where he can then become the caretaker, something. I was curious to see what the solution would be. And then basically, like, at the end of the book, he was like, well, you could do this thing where sometimes young people are struggling to afford rent. And so they end up, he apparently, like, saw it in some documentary or something like that. Some young people will end up living with an older person, and this is a win-win because it helps the young people with affordability and housing costs. So it provides them a nice place to live, and in exchange, they help this elderly person with sometimes things that are not as easy for them, but it also is very helpful with the elderly because then they have someone to talk to, they have somebody that can assist them at times, kind of just make sure everything's okay with them, and that is really lovely. But the part that I didn't love, and this is why I said it's a minor thing, is I didn't love that this was just kind of a solution brought up for the sake of resolving how these two were going to be together. I kind of would have preferred if this was brought into the equation earlier. Like if Truman had suggested this early on, because this is presented at pretty much the end of the book before he goes and stalks that one author. But I kind of would have preferred if this was brought up before, and then maybe, because it's a nice idea, but there's other challenges that go along with that. Like, who's going to live with the mother? Do we trust these people to live with her? And that's a whole other situation too. Like, helping navigate that could have also been a way for these two to grow closer to each other. But it ended up feeling like the mother who needed some form of a caretaker there for her, it just felt like she ended up representing a hurdle for the couple as opposed to actually feeling like another person who matters in the story. I'm not sure if I'm articulating that in a way that's clear, but I just kind of wish that idea had been presented earlier as opposed to toward the end as just this, like, I know, we can just, like, get your mom so that you don't have to spend as much time with her. That way we can be together. It's just, I didn't love how that was handled, but I'm not upset about it either. I just think timing, how it was timed, I think could have been tweaked slightly. Returning to Greta, the other perspective in this story, Greta clearly is somebody who is loving living in New Orleans. She meets somebody and they hit it off right away, and there's a lot about her kind of getting away from her family where she's realizing just how much her and her family are enmeshed. So I do feel like the growth of her character throughout her plotline was good and it was progressing well. But there was something that occurred with her and her love interest that I personally thought was a little unreasonable, and how it played out I thought also was very unrealistic. It also kind of tied into the character recognizing aspects of her own life and family. What happens is the love interest for her, for Greta, she at one point is hungover and she's like, ugh, I feel terrible, ugh. And Greta asks, like, do you want me to get you some food and clean up? Because they'd had a party the night before, the love interest and her roommates, they'd had a party. And she's like, do you want me to, like, clean up, make you some food? And she's like, ugh, no, don't worry about it, it's fine. And she's like, okay. And then she decides, like, you know what? I'm going to clean up for her anyway. I'm going to clean up that way when she finally does feel a little bit better, she can wake up to a clean house, and I'll make her some food and, like, leave it for her if she wants it. So she does all that, and then she goes and she has to go do some stuff. So later, the love interest calls her, and she's like, we need to talk. And she's like, oh, okay. And she's a little nervous, like, oh my gosh, did I do something wrong? What did I do? So she gets back to the house, and the love interest is like, I told you that I did not want you to clean, and I did not want you to make me any food. And Greta's like, what? And then she's like, I told you no. And she was like, I'm sorry. And then she's like, I told you, because she has some trauma with her mother. But she's like, it's really important to me that when I say something to you, that you listen and you don't decide what's best for me. And Greta asks, wait, are you mad because I cleaned and I made food? And she's like, I'm mad because you didn't listen to what I said. And my dog just barked if you heard her. And Greta says, I was just trying to be nice. And she's like, I don't need you deciding what's best for me. And then she basically tells her, like, that, you know, this is because of the fact that you and your family are the way that you are and stuff. And then the part that I thought was unrealistic is that Greta's like, oh my God, I'm my mother. And then she has this whole meltdown. She's like, what other social etiquette things have I been doing wrong? And what lines have I been crossing? I'm so sorry. And that's the part where I was like, okay. I went back and looked at the exchange because I was like, did she really concretely tell her, no, please don't clean. I'm telling you, I don't want you to clean. Because the reason she didn't want her to clean is because apparently it's a tradition that whenever they have this party each year, her and her roommates, that they clean together and they're, you know, they feel all sluggish and hungover, but it's this fun little bonding moment. Okay, I can understand where if the other character, Greta, in cleaning ended up kind of, you know, messing with that a little bit. And there was one other time where the love interest was grading some papers because it's something that she does for work. So she was grading papers. She's like, I can't wait for when I'm done with this so I can go get some ice cream. And so Greta comes and gets her ice cream. Like, here's your ice cream. And then she was like, I wanted to go specifically to this one ice cream place because it would be like a reward for when I'm done. This is like a tradition for myself. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. And she's like, it's okay. So this time when Greta cleaned and she's like, this is something you do, whether people want it or not, you just decide what's best for them. And I understand conceptually what is happening here. And I do actually think it's important to have this kind of stuff in stories because this is where miscommunication can happen. This is where people, you know, for some people they'll say like, no, it's okay. And then someone will do it for them. And they're like, thank you. Like, I appreciate it. I just felt bad asking you to do it, but it means a lot that you did it anyway. And that's different from somebody who, when they say, no, please don't do this, they truly mean it. They're not being coy or anything. And this is obviously how the love interest is. If she says something, she's not mincing words. She really means it. So, like, I appreciate the scene happening, and both of these scenes happening so that you can kind of show this sort of situation. However, these two examples I think are not the best at showing this because, and the reason I say I went back and read it is I was curious how clearly the love interest tells Greta, don't clean. And I went back and really, truly, Greta's just like, do you want me to like clean up for you, make you some food? Maybe that'll help when you're feeling a little better. And she's like, no, it's fine. And I'm just like, I mean, I get it. But also, you know, because it then turns into Greta being like, see, Greta, just like your family bulldozes over what you say and what you want, and the way they don't ever consider what you're actually saying, they decide what's best for you, you're doing the same thing. And I'm like, hold on. This doesn't feel like a Greta specific thing. This feels like what a lot of people, like if you don't feel good, if you're feeling sick for whatever reason, and your house is messy, and someone's like, you want me to like clean up the house? And you're like, no, it's fine. And they clean up anyway. A lot of people would be like, oh my gosh, like, you didn't have to do that. You know, that's why most people would be like, I told you it was okay. And they'd be like, no, I felt bad that you didn't feel good. That's how I feel like a lot of people, that feels like, you know, and so this, the love interest being like, I told you, because she's really, really adamant, like, I told you and you didn't listen. And I'm like, you just said, no, it's all right. You know, like, it wasn't, it could have been a little clearer. Because I guess, like, if something like this occurred with myself and my husband, Luna's sniffing my shoes right now. If something like this occurred with me and Sean, that's his name, if you don't know, I don't know, I might tell him, like, I know it was really sweet that you did this, but I kind of wanted to do this. He'd probably be like, oh, I'm sorry. I'd be like, you meant well. I mean, I feel like you would just, it would go like that. It wouldn't be like, you know, you do this because of your family. I don't know if you realize, but you're actually like just like them. I don't feel like that's how that would transpire. And a little bit, I'd be like, I understand what you're saying, but I think the way you're talking to me right now is, I think you're kind of weaponizing like the trauma I have with my own family against me right now. I feel like it's kind of using like therapy talk against somebody. I don't know. I really didn't like that scene. I thought it was kind of really ridiculous because, again, I understand the concept, but I just feel like a different scenario would have highlighted this better. And also Greta's reaction being like, oh my god, I'm my mother, and her having this epiphany. Because they've only been dating a tiny, tiny bit at this point. That's the other thing, too. Like, you know, I'm not saying you should fake it. You shouldn't fake your personality or how you are or your preferences or whatever when you're first dating. But, like, right out the bat being like, we need to talk. And then having this, like, you know, this is because of how you are with your family. Like, having this whole thing when you don't know each other that well. I don't know. I was just like, I would call it off. I'd be like, I don't think... I might be more chill than you. Compatibility-wise, you know, I feel like I would be afraid that in the same way that my own family kind of like bulldozes through how I feel, I would then need to do some self-reflection of like, maybe my problem is that I'm used to people pushing me around, which this other person is, it just doesn't feel like they're extending that much understanding to me right now. Also, because this is a contemporary romance story, as you might expect, there are some intimate scenes, and I wasn't the biggest fan of some of the word choices that were used in some of these scenes, or just some of the ways that the characters, you know, everybody's got their own thing that they like or don't like, and that's fine. I didn't like some of the stuff in this. For example, they use the word crotch a lot in this, like a surprising amount. So instead of saying whenever somebody makes them feel some kind of way, like all tingly, that sort of thing, the phrase like, I felt it from my head to my toes, or from like my scalp to my toes, it always says like from my head to my crotch. And I think that's such a funny way to describe it. It's not like, I don't know, just, you can say a different word than crotch, you know? It's... What's worse for all of you, the word crotch or the word moist? Because I know moist is a big one, but crotch? When it's meant to be sexy? When it's meant to be sexy. The word crotch? I'm just... I don't know. I mean, they didn't say it to each other. It was in the narrative. It's not like, man, you're making things happen in my crotch right now. It wasn't like that. But still, you know, even in the narrative. And I don't think it was written in a way where it was like purposefully using the word crotch to be really, really funny. I think it was just like, we're building up to a sexy thing. And that word just took it right away. Also, there's a part where teach their own. If you all like this, that's fine. It just wasn't my favorite thing. And more so because I think I visualized it in a way that maybe was goofy, and maybe in the book, if, it was adapted into a movie, it wouldn't be goofy. There's a part where these two characters are fooling around in a graveyard. But anywho, so they're like fooling around, touching each other. These two individuals happen to be the ladies. And then some other people come around and they're like, teehee, we'll have to continue this elsewhere. And as kind of a I'll be thinking of you in the meantime thing, the one character puts their fingers up to their nose and just takes like a big inhale. Just like, But just the visual of like sniffing like that was really funny to me. And the other character, she maybe even felt something happen in her crotch. But it was really funny to me, and I did not find it to be progressing the relationship in a way that I was like, man, the tension between these two, it just didn't, it wasn't for me. I did feel like Greta, unfortunately, it was kind of sad, but I just feel like Greta, when she finally does start to be like, you know what, I'm going to stick up for myself, she also, similar to Truman, like starts to behave in ways that I'm like, what are you doing? So as an example, she goes to the person's house who Truman had been dating. The guy he'd been dating was named Guy. So Guy was the one that had a whole secret family. She's like, you know what? It was messed up what happened with Truman. So she goes to that guy's house and knocks on the door, and she's like, hi, are you Guy's husband? And the guy's like, yeah. And she's like, your husband sucks and he cheated on you. And then she's just like, mic drop, and she leaves, basically. I don't think she actually says mic drop, but her friend might have. Her friend said something. The way these people talk to each other is very like internet way of talking, where I'm like, yeah, people talk like this on the internet, but I don't know if a lot of people talk like this in real life. But I'll have to insert some clips of how they talked. But the mutual friend that was the one that proposed the idea of these two switching houses, she was like, OMG, you did not. And like they talk like that to each other, and I'm like, these people are like in their 30s. I guess I wish they didn't quite talk like this. But anyway, so she also just starts going on this rampage when she's feeling awesome and like, you know what? Like, you don't have to just let people treat you a certain way. And she when she decides, you know what? I'm going to confront my mom. I'm going to tell my mom I'm moving. I've decided I'm going to move. So she shows up and her mom's like, oh, you're home. Yay, whatever. And she's like, I'm moving. And then she says something so mean to her mom. She basically tells her mom that like all she's ever done is like raise kids, and she's like, it's not our fault that you're unfulfilled in life. She just says these really mean things to her mom, and I was like, dude, what the heck? Like, I get that your family, that all of you are a little too in each other's business. Your one sister, she's mean. The one sister is just cranky and awful, and then suddenly, because she's had realizations and epitomes about her own life, Greta just like reads her sister like a book, and she's like, you know what? I actually feel bad for you because, and she just starts telling her off and stuff too, which that sister she was pretty awful. So I'm like, I don't know if I feel too bad. But the mom, this woman earlier is like, what's something you respect about your mom? And Greta says something that I'm like, I get what you mean, but also I feel like you have the wrong conclusion with this. Where Greta's like, oh my gosh, do I not respect anything about my mom? And she tells this older woman, she's like, I mean, it's definitely really impressive. I think there's a total of 5 kids with her and her siblings. She's like, I mean, it's impressive that she raised 5 kids, but I refuse to reduce my mother to just being a mother. And I'm just like, except that being a parent, I mean, 5 kids is a lot of kids. I get what you're saying, where it's like you don't want to pigeonhole your mom into this one area and not value anything else about her as a person. You're only like, I get that you don't want to only see her as a mother, but also raising children is very challenging. So it's like, you can give her flowers in that department. Like, that's okay. Like, you can be like, she really did, like, care a lot about us. And she, like, you don't have to frame it as, like, I refuse to pigeonhole her as just a mom. You can think about, like, the things that she did well as a mother. Like, she can be a compassionate person. She always tried to do everything she could for us. She was very self-sacrificing. Like, you can identify pieces of what made her raising you and your siblings. You can value those things. Like, think a little deeper, because being a parent, like, being a mom is a valuable thing. Being a parent is a valuable thing. It was just irritating because it's like, I understand why you don't want to reduce her to this one form of who she is as a person, but you're also reducing how much it takes to raise children. It's how, especially if you were like, if it was a parent who genuinely did so much for their kids, even if they made mistakes, which it seems like, this mother made some, certainly, and every parent's going to, but if they, like, genuinely were doing so much for their kids, you can give them some credit for that. I feel like it was a little too it was too simplified. So I didn't love that. But then she says that, and then when she tells her mom off, she's basically like, you never did anything with your life. And you're like, all right, so you are reducing her to just that. And then also you're throwing it in her face. It was super mean and very uncalled for. And I get wanting to stick up for yourself. And I also get that sometimes when you get angry, you say things you don't necessarily mean, or maybe, like, you cross some lines. But I was waiting for the inevitable, like, I need to call my mom and, like, maybe we need to talk this out, because I was clearly holding on to a lot, and I said some things, and I said it in ways that I shouldn't have said it. I was waiting for that moment, but instead, like, the mom drives down and talks to her, and she's like, you're right. And I'm just like, okay, now the mom needs to stick up for herself. I need the mom to be like, excuse me, I didn't do everything perfect, but I could appreciate, like, I kind of want the mom to go on her own version of a rampage a little bit. I really didn't love that part of the story. But anywho, even though I appreciated the aspects of, like, found family, and also when you do have struggles with how you're going to have family in your life and the significant other, and what happens when you only have so much time. Like, that was more so what was going on in Truman's perspective. Like, I appreciated that. I appreciated showing how difficult it is to make a decision that would be best for you when you feel like you're letting everybody else down. So for Greta moving, this feeling of, like, my whole family, what if my whole family never wants to talk to me again? And how unfair that would be, but also you love them at the same time. So I appreciate all these complex things. I did appreciate, even though I didn't like how it was executed, I did appreciate the conversation about basically communication, and how communication styles are different from person to person. So you have to listen to that individual. I appreciated all those things. But the other things I didn't appreciate really quite irritated me.
Yeah, what a sweetie you are. I love you. Luna, I love you. Yeah.
The time has come to discuss my least favorite book of these 5. Plight Before Christmas. I am bummed because, as far as the way that things progress throughout the story, how the story was written, how the characters spoke, all of those things, I actually think, in those ways, I liked this one the most, but I despised the characters so much, and certain things that they would say, and certain things that were kind of implied or pretty much directly stated in the narrative at times, I really did not care for. So let's get into it. The setup for this book, you follow 2 characters, Whitney and Eli. Right away, there were some things in this story where I thought, I didn't love that, but I also will wait and see. We'll see how things progress throughout this story. We'll wait and see how the characters wrestle with these sorts of things. And it kicks off with Whitney not getting a promotion that she deserved. So she's kind of feeling pretty bad because she was really looking forward to this promotion. It goes to some man who he often made time for his family instead of being the one to come into the office like Whitney did. Whitney sacrificed pretty much her social life, all her free time. She was always coming in, she was always available, and yet she got overlooked because this guy, he's just basically buddy-buddy with the boss man. And you're like, yeah, that would suck. That sucks. She also recently broke up with her boyfriend, who already, when she talks about this, I'm kind of like, am I supposed to feel bad about this? Because you're kind of the bad one here. So she was only really seeing this guy because his crotch area was just so filled. Basically, he was well endowed, we'll say. And she was just enjoying that. But he was also real dumb. As an example, when she called it off with him, she told him something to the effect of, we're just in two different places. And his response was, what do you mean? We're both here right now. That, though, wasn't going to cut it. So she had called it off because they really weren't the same places in their lives. So she's pretty bummed as she heads to her family's cabin for the holidays. This is something they do all the time. It used to be their grandparents. Their grandparents have died. Their grandparents were so in love with each other, and when one of them died, the other one died shortly after, and it was this really beautiful little love story between these grandparents, and they're not there anymore. But the current mother, who I am going to refer to sometimes as the grandmother, because there's also nieces and nephews in the book, and obviously then this woman is their grandmother, even though it's the mother of the main character. So if I say grandmother at any point, I'm referring to her. But, she's trying to fill in what the grandparents from before used to do, where she decorates the whole cabin, and they're really working hard to just have this lovely Christmas. And Whitney has this pretty good relationship. She has two siblings, a brother and a sister. They're both married, and they have kids, and she loves being an aunt. But the whole family's a little concerned because it just kind of seemed like she always would have wanted a family of her own. And this was the part where I was like, are we addressing real world things here? Or are we implying that her life is lacking meaning or isn't as fulfilling because she is a woman who isn't married yet, even though she's in her 30s? Is it one of those situations? And the sister, who is married, and she feels like she's just lost all the romance in her marriage. They're just hitting a rough spot. They're just kind of in mom and dad mode. She's struggling with that feeling of like, oh, you're so lucky you have all your independence now. And, like the one sister is like, you have a family, that's nice. But when they first go to this cabin, Whitney is talking to her sister, and her sister is pulling the whole like, I'm just concerned because, you're single. Basically, you're single and like, you don't have any kids. So she's kind of like, excuse me, I can do whatever I want whenever I want. Can you? I don't think so. Don't you have problems with your husband right now? Like, they're just being catty. And then they're both like, I'm sorry, that was mean. They have their sister moment. But I'm also kind of like, I don't know. Her brother, even though it's supposed to be a family thing, the brother Whitney discovers that her brother is going to be bringing a coworker. And she's like, what? Some stray? And the mom's like, well, honey, it's like, I guess his friend, he's really close to him, and also he doesn't have any family or anywhere to go, so, we'll welcome him, it's fine. And you're like, all right, so there's going to be something with Whitney and this guy, whoever this guy is, of course, right? That's the idea. Before the guy gets there, though, you're getting kind of family dynamics, and one of the things that was so upsetting to me about this book is the way that they treat the kids in the family. So first off, there's a 9-year-old in the family. It's the niece. It's Whitney's niece. It's her sister's daughter. This little girl, I feel so bad for her. So as soon as Whitney gets there and she hears the girl being like, oh, Mom, let me use my phone. And the mom's like, no, you need to be present. You're with family. And she's like, oh, you're ruining my life or whatever. They overhear this argument happening. And the mom/grandma, Whitney's mom, is like, oh, pour me a drink, basically, because they're like, oh, geez, this is going to be a long weekend. And then the mom says to Whitney, she's like, by the way, the 9-year-old, she's like, she started her period. And Whitney's like, oh my gosh, but she's 9. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, and also God has a sense of humor because it just happened last night. And they're like, well, bottoms up. And the dynamic already, I'm like, yeah, sure. A 9-year-old starting her period is difficult for you. okay. Like, I already am super pissed off at the mom slash grandma and Whitney, because I'm like, can you imagine? Can you imagine being that 9-year-old? That sucks. And in fact, this isn't even something a lot of people have to imagine. Especially if you were super, super young when that occurred. And to have that happen when you're not at home, you're around your family, and like, you're 9, that sucks. 9-year-olds are little. You're little and you're dealing with this thing that is like painful and it's messing with your, all this stuff. And like the women in the family are just like, oh boy, it's gonna be a long week or whatever. You're just like, come on. And it's not like the 9-year-old heard that exchange, but already I'm just like, okay, I don't like the lack of any compassion that's happening for this little girl right now. And let me tell you, that continues on. So first off, Whitney thinks like, I love being an aunt. I'm a good aunt. I love all of my nieces and nephews. But to be honest, I love my one nephew the most. And I guess sometimes that happens. You have some kids you just have more of a bond with. I'm not saying like you're evil if you happen to have a favorite niece or nephew. But I don't know. The way that they like talk about the 9-year-old versus the toddler baby boy in the family, like he's just this little angel who sometimes when we say dirty words he repeats it. And he's so chunky and cute. And also the 9-year-old, oh god, she's here and she's like on her period, so she's so difficult. Just the way they talk about these kids, I'm already irritated. The 9-year-old, she comes in and she's all like, Aunt Whitney, hi, and she's all excited, and the aunt slash our main character, Whitney, she's like, hey, you know, I'll let you do my makeup for when we eat tonight. And she's like, yay, because she really likes makeup. And her current dream is like, I want to do stuff with makeup. And you're like, okay, so even if she changes her mind someday, because she's 9, you know, people change their mind from the time they're a kid. It's something she obviously really likes, she's passionate about. She's not the best at it, but Whitney thinks like she's such a good aunt because she's letting the 9-year-old do her makeup, even though she's like sucks at it. So she sits down, the little girl puts a lot of makeup on her, and she's like, I'm gonna be a good aunt because I'm not only letting her put this makeup on me, but I'm just like gonna leave it on. And I'm like, here's what a good aunt would do. A good aunt would be like, so what kinds of looks do you really like doing? What kinds of makeup, what's your favorite product? Do you like lip stuff? Are you more skin? Like, you would ask those kinds of questions. And even if you don't know, you could be like, tell me about it. I don't know a whole lot about makeup. Tell me what you like about it. I'm like, does no one in this family know how to talk to any child ever? And I have to return back to the plot because, you know, I have to tell you about the plot. We'll return to this 9-year-old later and how people treat her, which is garbage. Spoiler alert. They treat her like garbage. It really bothers me. But anyway, so the brother comes in. He's the last of the family to show up. And lo and behold, his friend from work is Whitney's ex-boyfriend from college. The man who was the love of her life, but he broke up with her. They were so passionate and they loved each other so much, and then out of nowhere, it felt like he suddenly got really cold and distant. They broke up. She hasn't seen him or talked to him since. She was a wreck for a really long time after. Her family had to help pick her up off her feet. And there is also this implication that, like, ever since then, she's just never really been, like, living, you know? And whatever. Like, I'm not trying to diminish how difficult a bad breakup can be, but it's been, it's been more than 10 years since this happened. It's been like 15 or something. I'm trying to remember the exact amount, but it's been a while since she's seen this man. And I was hoping that truly the guy, whose name was Eli, had no idea that his friend from work was Whitney's brother. Nope. He knew full well. The brother did not know, because then the family, like the sister who immediately is like, oh my gosh, what the heck is wrong with you? Why would you bring? He's like, I didn't know that was her ex from college. Genuinely, he didn't know. Okay, so he's not a part of this. But Eli knew right away. And then he just decides, he even like goes out of his way to try to appear like puppy dog eyes, I have nowhere to go for the holidays, so that the brother will invite him over. And then he can try to talk to Whitney again. And I'm like, what is with these books? In the previous one, we had the guy going to some woman's house, which that one's worse. I recognize that one's worse. But in this scenario, it's like you are trying to basically insert yourself into these people's family holiday time together because you have some unresolved things that you want to talk to Whitney about, that's incredibly selfish. So already I'm like, screw this guy. I would be furious. Plus, he's the one that messed the relationship up. If you find out that this guy is the brother of your ex from college, like over a decade ago, then I don't know, be like, hey man, I used to date your sister. I wouldn't mind trying to reach out to her. I feel like I didn't end things very well. Whatever. But like, don't then, because that messes up your friendship with the brother too, because apparently they're very close. But that's gonna break some trust there too. Like, you knew this whole time and you didn't tell me. And you would also, if you're the brother, you'd feel kind of used too. So I'm like, Eli sucks. But whatever. Once again, sometimes you have to have this like, how are we gonna make things happen in these stories? I still think it would have been better if he just didn't know. If truly he had no idea and they showed up like, oh my gosh. And then they were able to like move forward and he was able to like let her know and then feelings build from there, which whatever. But that's not what happened. So I already don't like Eli getting off on the wrong foot here. And she's upset. She doesn't like that he's here, but she's just gonna try to be civil or whatever. The guy, Eli is... Okay, so apparently he's changed since college, and you do go back and forth, and you're seeing this whirlwind romance they had. And to be honest, I didn't love their chemistry even when they were in college, so I'm like really not rooting for them. But you can see they clearly were in love with each other. And then he got all distant and cold after a while, and you don't know why. And so the book is kind of has this over you the whole time. What happened? And what happened, I will get to, but I gotta make sure I don't jump ahead. First, we gotta talk about some other things that occur with all the family drama. So one of the things that happens is, as noted before, the sister has been feeling like the romance is gone in her relationship with her husband. So she's talking to Whitney about it, and she's like, I don't know, I just feel like, you know, if I'm taking a bath and I'm like trying to relax, he'll just like come in and use the toilet, I'm right there, and he'll be like, what, I really had to go, or whatever, and it's just like, oh... And that's, I'm not making it up. That's a real conversation she's venting to her sister about. And her sister's like, you know what you should do? You should use your mouth. And her sister's like, oh my gosh, I have like real problems. You're saying this is going to fix it? And she's like, men are just like giant apes. And it's a good start. And of course, Eli is overhearing all this. He's like, you know, I happen to remember that you were pretty good at using your mouth. Sorry, I know I shouldn't have eavesdropped or whatever. Also, once again, this whole, like, men are apes. It's a little bit like women are from Venus, men are from Mars dynamic. And there's a lot of things in this book that are, like, awkwardly gendered that don't need to be. Fast forward, the sister, she was like, maybe I'll take Whitney's advice. And so she was going to try to be all sexy with the husband, and he didn't realize that's what she was doing. So he's like, oh, what do you need? And she's like all upset, and he's like, oh geez, I don't know, you're always in a mood. I have a lot of thoughts about the sister and her husband. Whitney is kind of like, you know, it takes a lot for a marriage to work. You're just in a rough spot. She just kind of keeps being like, you know, you should just keep trying. Just do, you know, you actually should be really grateful for him. Don't throw everything away just because you guys are going through a rough spot right now, whatever. You know, it's not like he like did something horrendous. Until I watched how he talked to his daughter, and I'm just like, divorce that man. Are you serious? So, some setup for this scene. So, this little, once again, 9-year-old, she, at one point, is talking to the aunt, is talking to Whitney, and she's like, can I see your phone? And she wants to look at the pictures that she took of the makeup that she did for Whitney that first day. She wants to look at the makeup pictures. So Whitney's like, go ahead, you can look. I'm such a good aunt. I'm such a cool aunt. Somehow the phone is connected to something where the family can end up seeing stuff. So she's trying to look through, and Whitney and Eli, you know, really intense conversation. And then out of nowhere, the little girl is like, I can't remember the guy's name. Troy, that's not his name. Or John, I don't know. But she's like, who's John? Why are you getting pictures of his butt? And Whitney's like, oh my gosh, what? Clearly what had happened is that one of Whitney's friends was hoping to hook up with this guy that she liked. And then I would hope it was consensual, but it kind of seems like the woman took pictures of this guy's butt and then was sending it to Whitney. And then she's also sending, you know, like the eggplant emoji and water or whatever. And the little girl's giggling. She's like, what does that even mean? Why are they sending that? And she's like, why are you going through my messages? And she's like, I was just trying to look at like the pictures. I understand what the little girl is saying. These messages are just popping up as she's trying to look. That wasn't totally her fault, right? Because it kind of was just an accident. It's an embarrassing accident, but it wasn't like she went out of her way to do something she wasn't supposed to or stole the phone or something like that. The brother-in-law, the father of this little girl, he comes in and he's really upset. His name is Thatch. But the little girl says, I was just looking at the makeup pictures I took of you and they came on the screen. And then Whitney says, do not ask for my phone again. And she says, fine. And then she goes, I hate Christmas. Whatever. She's a little girl. You got mad at her for something that was kind of your own fault. And she's just like, ugh, she's just having a reaction. I'm not saying it's the best reaction to have, but she's 9. She's going through some stuff, as we discussed at the beginning, which apparently is so difficult for all of you to deal with. But, it's difficult for her. There's a lot happening. Adults are mad at her for something that she's not responsible for. So her dad, though, when she says, I hate Christmas, Thatch says, that's enough, Gracie. Go to your room this instant. And she says, but Daddy, I didn't do anything. Which she didn't. And he says, you've been nothing but a nightmare since we left Nashville, and I've had enough. We've all had enough. You're making, italicized, everyone miserable. You know better, and until you act better, I don't want to see you. Are you serious? Are you serious? That's super mean to say for something that was kind of Whitney's fault. I get it was a big accident. It's embarrassing. It's uncomfortable. But you didn't really snap at her for that situation. You snapped at her because she said, I hate Christmas. What the heck? So he says all this, and apparently he doesn't typically, have these outbursts like this. So the little girl's like crying and she runs to her room. Everybody's like, oh my gosh. Like, it's all tense. And then this is what he says. I thought he was about to be like, I'm so sorry, I lost my temper. I've just been going through a lot. I thought he would say something that like humanized him. There's a gnat. Maybe it's Thatch. Everybody has those moments where they get a little angrier than they need to get over something, whatever. But this is what he says. He says, Jesus, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I can't manage to get my daughter to act like a well-behaved human for a single day. Dude, are you serious? This is why I'm like, yeah, who cares about staying with this guy? This guy sucks. She's fine. She's fine. Is she a little moody? Is she a little... Sure, but this is a dumb reason. She's not a horrible, angry child just running around and like purposefully breaking everybody's stuff, and she didn't throw the phone or something like that. And I'm not saying that's like all a kid needs to do for you to, tell them to go to their room or whatever. But I'm just like, where does it seem like she gets her moodiness from? I wonder. Anyway, so I don't like Thatch. I don't like Thatch throughout the rest of the book. He doesn't really do anything that redeems him. They just overhear him later getting some from the sister. And then, they patch things up. So it kind of actually works. Men are so simple. Also, I guess returning to Eli and Whitney, even though I couldn't care less, and I would really like it if these two didn't end up together. So the dad of the family, so like the grandpa, if you will, his sister, they're all like, oh, geez, because she's coming in for a day. And they all hate her because she's this like grumpy old lonely lady. What's in store for Whitney if she never ends up with somebody? Describe her as like this old spinster. Eli to the rescue is like, oh, and like, how come you're not with anybody? And basically it's like kind of a turn on that Eli is really mean to this cranky old lady who actually Whitney would totally turn into if she didn't find love. And then the old lady goes home and they're just like, cool. So that happens. And then they're talking about, like, I just really don't know what went wrong when we were younger. Anytime I would try to... This is an actual thing that gets said in the book. That anytime she tried to kind of basically take care of him, like if he was sick or something and she tried to bring him soup, it worded it something like, anytime I tried to be maternal with him, rejected it. Don't you mean anytime you try to be nice to him? Anytime you try to take care of him? Do we have to assign being compassionate to your boyfriend as being motherly to your boyfriend? If you had said that in relation to one of the kids or something, like when you go to change the diaper of the baby that you're so in love with, you go to change your nephew's diaper, described as maternal, you're like, okay. But then describing how you are with your boyfriend as maternal, you're just being compassionate. You're just being nice. And I understand for a lot of people, they associate those things with their moms because their moms were really compassionate and nice and took care of them, except for apparently not in this family because we see how they treat the daughters. But regardless, I understand why you would attribute certain things to your mom or certain things to your dad. But it's like, are you saying your dad never came in and made you soup? How come you're not being paternal to your boyfriend right now? Why don't just say you're being nice to your boyfriend? Like, it was, they would have these weird kind of like gender specifics or parental inserts in areas that felt weird and borderline gave me the ick. So that was something they did. But, you know, Whitney is just like, I've always wanted the kind of love that my parents had. So there's a scene where Eli, who has done nothing really to endear the family to him, except for he also thinks the one baby is cute. And he's like kind of nice to one of the quiet nieces. And you're like, that is nice. But otherwise, for some reason, the whole family's like kind of rooting for him. And they're like, Whitney, just give the guy a chance. And I'm like, okay, wait, hold on. He hasn't really done anything. And you guys are like, he's trying really hard. And he's not at all. I'm like, did we all forget he purposefully inserted himself into this scenario in kind of a creepy stalker-ish way? But there's a part where the mom/grandma, Whitney's mother, she's talking to just Eli. And he's like, oh, you know, like they're talking about how her and her husband, they've like been through thick and thin. And they just like, they always have been so in love. And she's like, can I tell you a secret? It wasn't always perfect. And he's like, oh, yeah. And she's like, don't tell the kids this. But one time I shot him in the butt. He's like, what? And she's like, yeah, you know, I was just so stressed because the kids, they were all little and there's 3 of them. And he kept going out into the shed or the garage or whatever, some like guy space, you know. He kept going over there and she was always having to deal with everything alone. And she's like, I just got sick of it one day. So I think she took an old crossbow that they had and then she shot him in the butt. So they had to go to the emergency room. As you do, you know, when your spouse shoots you. On the way home, she thought, I just knew then and there, this is it. I've ruined our life. We're going to get a divorce. But he just reached across and he took my hand. And I was like, hold on. Imagine if she wasn't doing the best job with the kids. And he was the one, like she had to go just because I'll stay in line with the whole gendered way of thinking. She was just always in the bathroom playing with her hair or something, you know. So let's say she's doing that all the time. And the dad is the one having to take care of the 3 young kids. And he gets so angry that he shoots his wife in the butt. If that wife on the way home from the emergency room took his hand, we would all be like, hey, hold on. Major red flag is waving. What? We would all be like, that's not okay. But once again, there's like this weird, like, you know, men and women, am I right? I shot my husband in the butt because it's just, he was driving me crazy. It's seen as like, ah, ha, 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 ha. Like, it's so funny that this happened. And she's like, shh, don't tell the kids that happened though. This is stupid. He should have divorced you if you shot him in the butt. And also, maybe talk to your husband. Have you ever heard of communication? Have you heard of talking? Have you heard of saying, hey, this is how I feel, and right now, I'm not saying you're doing this on purpose, but you're making me feel like it's all on me, and I have to do everything alone. Try. And if he ignores you, if he doesn't care, if he doesn't try, if he doesn't step up from then on out, okay, well then maybe you guys should call it off. Don't shoot your spouse. I can't believe I have to say that, but maybe don't. I mean, I don't think I have to say it to any of you. I sure hope that none of you are like, you know, I've thought about it, and I did it once, but, you know, things get crazy sometimes. My husband just drives me crazy. Maybe that is some of you. I don't know. If it is, don't do it again, I guess. But I just was like, this is so dumb. This is dumb. I'm not usually one person that's like, switch the roles, and then how do we feel? I don't always do that, because sometimes switching the roles brings in other things, like societal issues and trauma from other places or whatever. Like, I think the reverse idea doesn't always say what people think it says. But in this instance, I'm sorry, if you're physically abusing your spouse in some way, no. So, sorry. How can you see? This is why I brought up way at the beginning, way at the beginning, when I said, hey, that book I read last year where the girl looked out the bus window and she's like, that's the love of my life over there. I'm like, I'll take her over this stupid family. They all suck. Anyway, back to Eli. He sucks too. He is weirdly aggressive. That's the word I'll use. He's weirdly aggressive because supposedly he feels really bad about how things ended with them, and he feels like he needs to explain. He just wants to be able to explain. But every now and then he'll just grab her and kiss her or something like that. Or he'll tell her, you know what? If I wanted to just do it with you, we would have already done it. Could have it if I wanted it. And when he does kiss her at one point, she's like, you can't just kiss me. And he says something in response that's like, well, I just did. Okay. I don't even care what happened in the past. I don't even care why you ended things so abruptly when you guys were in college over a decade ago. I don't care. You're still a sucky person. I'm getting heated. I have to roll up my sleeves. I don't care because you're not a good guy. And I don't know why all the family is so, Whitney, you gotta give him a chance. Honestly, it feels like they think that because they're clearly you like him, and also women shouldn't be alone. That's the vibe. That's the vibe. Better to be with this loser than be by yourself. And I'm just like, no, it's not. But anywho, we get the big reveal. Pretty much at the end of the book, he's like, let me finally tell you what happened. And this isn't funny, but I'm just like, I can't believe that this is the reveal. It's not funny at all. It's very sad. The big reveal is that when he was a kid, he had cancer. And it was really difficult. He didn't have really any normal experiences as a kid. He felt in some ways like he was stunted because he didn't get all the experiences everybody else was getting, and he was battling cancer. It's really sad. And it really took a toll on the parents, so he got used to pretending he was fine even though he wasn't, and that's really hard on a kid. And you're like, that is really sad. And then the mom, she was drinking a lot, and then the dad, at one point he went down to get her and they were mad at each other. And he just finally got the news that he's in remission. And the day he's getting this news, his parents, because his dad went to go get his alcoholic mom, they get in a car accident and die. So it's a little man, giving Robin Hobb some competition with the trauma here. From a pretty young age, he's kind of on his own. He finally has a chance at life, but he just doesn't know how to live life, and so it turns out Luna's starting to huff and puff, so I feel like she's also oh geez with this. When he was with her, it turned out she was his first in every way. And before he told her about the cancer stuff, he told her that she was his first. And when he tells her basically, actually I was a virgin before me and you, because for some reason, he had this reputation of being this campus Casanova, and she used to call him that all the time, and he never really liked it. And I don't know, he got this reputation, I guess, because he was hot or something, but he's like, I don't even know where I got that reputation. But she had heard it, and so she would call him that, and she was always really hesitant to date him, because she's like, I want something serious. And he's like, I'll be serious. So when things were starting to get really, really serious between the two of them, he kind of flipped out, and he's like, I feel like I gotta get my own stuff together because I still have a lot of trauma from the fact that I had cancer and lost my parents when I was younger. And he never told her any of this, ever. He just basically flipped out and called things off. But back to what I was saying about when he told her in present day, actually, I wasn't Campus Casanova. He's like, I wasn't Campus Casanova. Actually, you were my first. And then he says something like, I hope this has bought me another conversation with you. And she's like, yeah, it has. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. I mean, it had to play out this way because, the virgin card isn't as big of a trump card as the, I had cancer card. And it just felt like we used cancer almost to emotionally manipulate her into feeling so bad that she was like, oh my gosh. And then they're together again, and then they live happily ever after. But I'm like, okay. I appreciate that he realized, I'm not ready for a serious commitment, and I have a lot of work to do on myself. Would it have been good if he had explained some of this to her at the time? Yes. And he knew that if he had explained it, he was afraid that she would stay anyway. And he's like, I really need to work on myself, though. And I'm like, well, then you can tell her, but you can also tell her that, I can't let you take care of me because I want you to also live your own life. And then he feels so bad because he's like, but you hadn't actually been living this whole time. And you're like, ah, geez. But she had this birthday list of all these things she wanted to do every single year. Go skydiving, that kind of stuff. And when they broke up, she left her list on accident. And so he took her list and then he did everything basically that was on her list himself in his efforts to live life. And I was telling my husband about this, and my husband was like, that's kind of messed up. Stole her dreams, and then he did them for himself. I guess he's grown because he went skydiving and, you know, all that other stuff. So he's like, he's changed. Even though in present day, this is my whole thing. It explains why he got all cold. And also, he was really young. It's a lot to go through. He didn't realize, like, he thought he had resolved certain things. He clearly hadn't. He flipped out. It explains some of that. It does not explain why you're still a jerk now, because he's not a decent, I mean, he's like a decent human being, but you're like, you inserted yourself into this family, you lied to this guy that's supposed to basically be your best friend, you also keep being like weirdly aggressive with this family. He also gets like super jealous when some repair guy shows up to fix her car, or some tow truck guy. He's just not, it would be different if he was a really nice guy, and again, if it had been, he didn't realize that that the guy was her brother, it was very serendipitous. Right? If he didn't know, okay, that's one thing. If he genuinely like wants to talk to her and she's like, I don't want to talk, and he's like, okay, I completely understand why you don't trust me. If he was like way more calm, understanding, and if he also basically acted like a normal, kind, mature, grown person. But it really was just, I'm still not over you. I've never been over you. I still remember even how you like to shave that area down there. Isn't that romantic? All that stuff. But he's still not a great guy. And then it's like, by the way, I had cancer when I was younger. And it's like, that's why you wouldn't let me be maternal towards you, you poor thing. Well, let's get married. There were other things too. There were other things that bothered me. I was really upset how they spoke to that 9-year-old though. That was a big one. That was a big one for me. Oh my gosh, how did I forget this part? There's a part, this is another example about the way that things are like weirdly gendered that don't need to be, and also does not say what I feel like it thought it was saying. Earlier in the book, she's like, I can do whatever I want whenever I want. Can you do that, sis? You know, when they're fighting or whatever. Fast forward to later, she's talking to her sister and she's just like, you don't know how lucky you are. And in the narrative, when her sister is still like struggling with everything with her husband, the husband got in the car because it's cold and he was like heating up the car early. That's apparently all it takes to win Whitney over, because Whitney's like, Thatch is such a good man. My sister doesn't even understand. And it's just like, you know what? A lot of women don't understand the things that men do for them, like warming up the car for us or like opening the pickle jar. That's just like the things that men do that women take for granted. I just was like, what would we all do without being able to open our pickle jars and warm up our cars for ourselves? What could we possibly do? How could we ever go on? We're going to end up like this ugly old spinster great aunt lady if we don't have that. The reason this upsets me is because a number of reasons, but it's like it's diminishing to the value that people have in our lives when we reduce them to these stupid, basic things. I love my spouse, he's my best friend. But I'm sorry, I don't love my husband because sometimes he kills the bugs in the house or something. Like, I don't love him for those random, stupid things. Like, men are more than that. Women are more than that. People are more than that. People are more than these stupid things. Yeah, what would your sister do? You know, maybe she can show her appreciation for warming up the car and opening pickle jars by doing stuff to him because he's just a giant ape, you know? Like, that's just like how it works with men and women. So yeah, I'll take the dumb couple from One Day in December any day over these idiots in this family. They're so stupid. So I need to now guess. Which ones I think have the highest. Do I even want to guess? I'll let you know what my ranking would be. Lovelight Farms. It was fine. Nothing about it really upset me. And also I did appreciate certain pieces of the story. It was cute. I would read something else by the author. I think second place for me. I mean, I really didn't like the character in How My Neighbor Stole Christmas, but I appreciated the lack of thinking that the book was something else. I really appreciated how much it owned that it was just kind of a ridiculous time. So it was entertaining, even if I found story to be really obnoxious and the third act breakup to be really dramatic and pointless. But there were pieces along the way that were entertaining. And the most wonderful crime of the year, I wish there was a little bit more to it. It was fine though. It was, of the 5, it makes sense to be the most in the middle because I think I felt like the least. And then the holiday trap, just because there were just some things that happened in that one that I was like, I mean, no, like the whole finding that woman and showing up at her house and that kind of stuff. I was just like, no. Anyway, we already went through that. And then this one, surprise, surprise, is at the bottom because of, I think, reasons I don't have to explain at this point. You know what? I kind of think that their ratings are just going to be the same as mine, actually. Not that I am thinking this just because I'm like, I have this, my taste is like objective, you know? Not because of that, but because I kind of am like looking and I think maybe that's possible. But let's find out. The Plight Before Christmas has the highest average rating by a lot for these 5 books. It's at 4.22. I guess I'll go through the others so that you know how everything ranks. Plight Before Christmas at 4.22. The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year at 3.92. That's already such a big difference. Then Lovelight Farms at 3.82. How My Neighbor Stole Christmas at 3.7. And then last, The Holiday Trap at 3.52. Anyway, I hope everybody is having a nice holiday season. I hope that if you have any trouble in your relationships, you don't resort to shooting somebody in the butt. Please don't stalk anybody, whether you used to date them or they have written your favorite book series of all time. And also, I just want to say thanks for watching. Thanks over the course of this year for tuning in to some videos. Thanks if you've been somebody who's watched for a long time. I really, really appreciate getting to chat with all of you about books. And I do really like, as hot and bothered, but not in a fun way, as I got over the course of this, as in literally I got heated as I was talking and I was bothered. Despite that, I did have a very fun time just sitting and chatting with all of you about these books. If you're interested in seeing last year's holiday romance themed video, I will have that one linked. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and if you are interested in checking any of these books out for yourself, I'll have them linked too. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day and I'll see you later. Bye.